Welcome to another program in our series, Freethinking Forum. I'm Bill Weir, the producer and host, and I'm delighted today to have with me Ashley Morgan.
Hi, thanks for having us.
And what is your role in Avenues for Homeless Youth?
My role at Avenues is program manager of our Minneapolis and Suburban host home program.
Well, that sounds like a big job.
Yeah, it's kind of a mouthful, but yeah, it's essentially working with communities in Minneapolis and suburbs around recruiting hosts. And ideally, they would take in youth who are experiencing homelessness.
Good. And what is this? I mean, could you tell us more about this host home program?
Yeah, so it was created in 2012, really to support homeless youth in the suburbs. That's how it began. And shortly after that, the city of Minneapolis also approached Avenues and asked if we would also run the same program for the city of Minneapolis. So we combined the two. It's now Minneapolis and suburbs. And essentially we are searching for hosts, community members who want to open their home to a youth who's experiencing homelessness. And the program supports about 10 youth with a pool of up to 25 families.
Well, good. 25 families that are ready to host.
Yes, that's the goal.
And what happens when someone wishes to volunteer?
Well, so what would happen is, they usually reach out to us, and then there's a few steps in there, and we can talk more about that, but usually the youth would stay with them for up to a period of 18 months, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, it kind of depends. We do have 3 host home programs, and so one is short term, the other 2 are longer term.
Good. So you can adapt it to the needs of the homeless youth.
Yes.
And is there training for the host home?
There's quite a bit of training that we offer. Initially up front, it's about 16 hours where we do a lot of discussion around social justice, racial equity, and also Gender 101, just kind of understanding issues in the GLBTQ community. And then after that, we offer ongoing trainings for all of our host families and those who are interested in the hosting experience.
And I bet there's also a phone number that a host can call if they have a question.
Yes. So myself and the other 2 program managers are available for hosts and offer that type of one-on-one support.
Well, it sounds like hosting a youth is like a kind of like an exchange program.
It is. It's similar to an exchange student program, which a lot of people are familiar with. You're opening your home to a youth, and essentially Avenues is providing all the support and training that hosts would need in order to do that.
And do they receive a subsidy?
They don't. So it's different from foster care. We are intentionally outside of the system. And so our host families don't get a subsidy or a stipend necessarily. It's very volunteer based, and that's intentional. And then we can offer support for emergencies, but typically it's just a volunteer based program.
There are many rewards for the hosts.
Oh, yes.
Just seeing the homeless youth get more settled and ready to be a part of the community.
Yeah, a lot of hosts feel like they're making a huge impact, not only in this young person's life, but in their community. And many of them report, learning more about themselves and learning more about social justice and how to really make a difference in their neighborhood and in their community.
So, how does the youth get linked up with a particular host?
Well, youth essentially would be able to pick out of a group of profiles, if you will. So
Oh, each host creates a
Yes.
profile?
yes, each host would create a profile, and those profiles would be in a pool of available hosts, and then the youth could look through them and decide based on what they see in the profiles if they want to meet that family or that individual. And one of the unique things about our profiles is we always have every host family or individual write a letter to a potential youth. And so that's been a pretty huge thing. A lot of the youth love to read those letters, and it gives them a feel for, who this person is at their core.
Yes, I can imagine when I was a youth how much that would mean to,
Yeah.
to get to know the potential hosts.
Yeah, it serves a great deal, I think, in just understanding who they are. And then also just to understand how their home works and what type of hobbies they have or interests and what the youth can expect when they're staying there with that family.
Good. So it's not like they're placed in a home, they're
No.
the way foster care often
That's
is.
correct. Yes, it's very youth driven. Youth get to decide where they would want to be. There's also a process once they make that decision that we go through, where it's really just a getting to know you process. We set up kind of meet and greets, I guess, with the youth and the potential host, just so that they can begin to build a relationship and ideally build trust, which can, then turn into a great experience.
Good. That sounds like a good way to get started.
It is, yeah.
And so, does this equip the youth for going on after their specified period with that host? Or do they go on to another host, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. So sometimes they do. Sometimes they'll, kind of move on from one hosting situation to another one. Sometimes they're moving into permanent housing. That's always the goal, is to get the youth into some form of permanent housing.
Perhaps an apartment?
Yep, maybe an apartment or another program within the community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good. And what supports do the youth and hosts receive from Avenues?
Yeah, so Avenues works really hard to support hosts one-on-one. We're small by design so that all the program managers are available for hosts on a one-to-one basis if something happens and they need to call in the moment. We also do home visits at least one time a month, but we can do them more, and sometimes we do. And then we also offer the ongoing training, which I mentioned earlier. The 16 hours up front, and then throughout the process there's things that we do every few months.
So the program managers, such as you, would be going out at least once a month to talk not only with the hosts but also with the youth
Yes.
as to whether things could be better.
Yeah, and if things are great, we talk about that too.
Good.
And then also it's a way for us to communicate about future plans and time frame, how much time the youth is planning to stay in the host home, and then preparations for move out if and when that becomes necessary. So we talk about all those things, and some of it's spent just getting to know you and getting to talk about the activities that they've done together and kind of highlighting the positives as well. And then the youth also typically has a case manager, and that case manager would also be at those monthly meetings.
A case manager from Avenues, or?
Two of our programs have in-house case managers through Avenues, and then the program that I'm working with, we have partnerships with other agencies in the community that provide that case management.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And do you want to name those or not?
We can. So some of those programs are Oasis for Youth. We've also worked with Move Forward, the YMCA. Lots of great programs in and around the metro that support Avenues and the work we
Good.
do.
Those are well-established programs. I recognize people have a high regard for them too.
Yeah.
as well as avenues. Is there anything more you could say about the supports that the youth get?
Yeah, so one of the things that we kind of prioritize is making sure that the youth is able to move on after host home into stable housing. So there's a lot of things that we like to make sure get addressed during that time. And part of that is getting that support through the case management, any support they might need around mental health issues, employment and education, really just any issues that youth is currently facing or challenges, and then goals that they have. So it's very youth driven again. The young person gets to kind of decide what their goals are, and then we create partnerships within the community and work with Avenue staff to kind of make that happen.
Now, I understand there's some career support.
Yes.
Would that be to the extent of vocational counseling
Yeah.
with an agency that specializes in that?
Well, we do have somebody at Avenues who works with all of our youth across all of our programs around career development and vocational studies, just helping them explore opportunities and also helping them line up employment if that's something that they're looking for. So for sure, that's an area that we really try to support youth with. It definitely impacts their ability to move on to stable housing. So.
Yes, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And so I sense that host homes are really important to our community. The suburbs, Minneapolis, how do you see it? And
Yeah, well, right
how
now in
important-
Minnesota, there's about 6,000 homeless youth on any given night.
6,000?
6,000 unaccompanied youth. Yes.
Wow.
And there's about 700 shelter beds to kind of meet that need. So
Only 700.
it's shocking. Yeah, there's only 700. And so Avenues really works with other agencies to kind of bridge that gap and help. Obviously, we want youth homelessness to end, but we try to get as many youth into stable housing as possible.
Good. Now, I know that the state and counties have had goals of eliminating homelessness, but we're
Yes.
nowhere near that yet, are we?
No, we are nowhere near that, but there are many agencies working really hard to tackle that issue.
And so, who can host the youth in a host home?
Well, so the interesting thing about Host Home is that it's a community-driven program. This is not coming from the county, it's not coming from the state, it comes from the community, and that's really how it developed. Community members came and said, hey, we know that this is a problem, we know that we have homeless youth right here in our backyard, and we want to do something about it. And so that's essentially how Host Home began. And it's evolved over the years, and it turned into this beautiful response to how neighbors can support other neighbors. And it's more of the idea of us and us versus us and them. Many people, hosts specifically, talk about the transformation that they experience through the hosting process and just understanding the face of homelessness. And it doesn't look like what people would typically think. It doesn't look like the homeless person standing on the street holding a sign. Many youth are couch hopping, and they're more hidden. They're harder to find, but they are there.
Yeah, as we drive along, we get to an intersection. Sometimes people are asking for money. This is not a typical situation for a homeless youth.
No, it's not. It's not common that you'd see a homeless youth on the corner asking for money. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but it doesn't happen quite as often. And I think it's because, youth, there's a lot of fear and shame around that. There's a lot of not wanting peers to know that they're experiencing homelessness. The struggle is just very different. It's much more limited access to certain services, and youth need different services than adults need as well. So Many of them are looking for stable homes. They're looking for opportunities to connect with their community, and they want to stay in their home school. They want to stay where their friends live. And so Host Home really works to keep youth in the community that they're from.
Good. And it sounds like one of the host requirements is genuinely care about young people.
Yes, we actually have that like written down in our values. You have to genuinely care about young people, because this is a relationship-based program. You know, it's not a checklist. This is you engaging with a youth, and you've got to have a general desire to want to connect with the young person and be a mentor and just be a positive adult in their life. So it's very much about relationship.
And they need a commitment to social justice, it seems.
Yes. So we also look for hosts who are actively involved in their community or at least very committed to social justice, and are either already educated or really willing to dive into some of the issues that a lot of youth are experiencing around racial equity. And we do talk a lot about white privilege, and talk a lot about just equality and equity for all youth, but just for all people in general.
And the power relationships too.
Yes, the power dynamic. We discuss that a lot. I think it's important for adults when working with youth to kind of understand that power struggle, and that all of our hosts, they are not in a parenting role. So they're really meant to be a supportive adult, an advocate for this youth, and so it's important to understand that power dynamic as well. And then also on a broader spectrum, to have an understanding for how power and privilege has kind of transformed in America and how many people have been marginalized by that. So,
yeah, are there age requirements for the host?
25. So the reason
you can be as young as 25.
You can be as young as 25. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's just because we want hosts who are going to be able to kind of be engaged in their community as an adult, kind of understand their place in the community as an adult. And then also, we don't want young people to run into someone that is their peer. You know, we work with youth up to 24, so there's the potential for that.
Yeah, so generally a 25-year-old host would have someone somewhat younger.
Yes, ideally, yeah.
And does a host have to be well acquainted with the Twin Cities?
Not necessarily. The ask is that they have extra space in their home and that they can provide food for the young person for up to that 18-month period, but it can be less too. I would say most of our hosting situations last about 12 months. Mm-hmm. And then usually the youth is transitioning into another program, into another housing situation.
Good. And what happens if the youth has a problem and maybe the house burns down or something? Not that catastrophe, but
yeah.
Problems in where things get damaged, or is there some kind of insurance requirement?
Well, so there isn't. It's kind of up to each host. We do ask that they have either renter's insurance or homeowner's insurance, just for incidentals and accidents and things like that.
Well, that seems like a good set of requirements. And so how does one become a host? What steps?
Yeah, so initially they would contact us. There is the 16-hour training. There's also a background check that we run on everybody. It's really routine. And then we also do interviews with the program staff. So that consists of myself or some of the other program managers, where we would do one in the community and then one in their home, just to kind of get a feel for what their home environment is like. Yeah. And there's also the application form along with the letter.
There's always a form.
There's always a form.
Yeah.
Yep. And yeah, and then generally just, having space in their home and having the ability to provide food.
Yeah.
Those are the big asks.
You don't require a separate bedroom.
I think ideally that would probably be best,
Sure,
but
yeah.
not always. There's a lot of unique housing situations in the metro area. Some people live in lofts. So, it just varies, but it just has to be a place that would be comfortable for the young person.
Yeah. Good. Does Avenues have other programs too?
Yes, so we have 3 host home programs, and then we also have Avenues for Young Families, which services families 18 to 24 and helps get them into permanent housing. And then we also have 2 shelters, and there's one in Brooklyn Park and one in North Minneapolis.
Good. Are you expanding sometime soon to the whole state?
Oh, we're always plotting and planning ways to grow, but
Yeah, that's a big undertaking to serve the whole state.
yes, it is.
And
There's a lot of work to be done.
so I understand that you are the one to contact if they want to consider being a host.
Yes, if you're interested in being a host, definitely reach out to me, Ashley Morgan, and I can post my email and phone number.
A. Morgan at avenuesforyouth.org.
Correct. Yep.
And do you want to give your phone number too?
Yeah, my phone number is 612-968-1672.
Well, good. We've got about a little over 5 minutes left.
Oh, wow, okay.
So let's talk. What would you like to add?
Oh, gosh. Well, one of the things right now that we are really trying to be more intentional about is recruiting and working with hosts of color. So
Good.
we want to reflect the community that we live in. We want our hosts to reflect the communities that youth are coming from. And what that means is we need a diverse group of hosts in all different situations.
And what background, what type of families are you especially looking for?
Well, so we work with individuals and families. It really doesn't matter. We also don't have any requirements about income. We really want to work with families at all income levels and all backgrounds. We don't have any religious preferences or anything like that. Ideally, we just want to work with people in the community who are supportive of youth experiencing homelessness, who are going to be great leaders and genuinely care about youth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like an ideal situation for young people. Mm-hmm. Do you care to comment on why they are homeless?
Youth experience homelessness for a multitude of reasons. Sometimes it's related to family struggles, which, a lot of families are experiencing generational poverty. And so that is definitely a barrier.
Generational poverty.
Generational poverty, yep. Where for many generations, their families have struggled financially and struggled to kind of overcome some of the systemic obstacles that have been placed in their way. And so we see a lot of youth who are coming out of families who maybe they're the first person to ever go to college, or maybe they are the first person to have stable housing. And so we definitely work with youth who've experienced that. I would say other reasons are sometimes teen pregnancy, and we are open to working with hosts who want to take in a young person and their child. So that's another area that people who have a passion for that can get involved. We also see sometimes youth are experiencing mental health concerns and they're presenting challenges, and so maybe home isn't the best place for them at that time.
It might be the shelter.
Sometimes it is, or
there's
sometimes
more staff support.
Yeah, ideally though, many of the youth that we work with want to be in a home environment and want to be surrounded by family or people they consider family. So I think host home is a great answer for that.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, Ashley, you seem to know an awful lot. and express it very
I try. I'm still learning. This work changes every day.
Really?
So there's much to learn.
Is there any more cooperation or collaboration you'd like from other organizations, the state of Minnesota or the county? Or
Yeah, well, right now we are gearing up for a 100-day challenge, which is really being put on by the state of Minnesota and Hennepin County around trying to eradicate youth homelessness. And
Really?
Yes, it's huge. It's great. So for the next 100 days, we're undergoing this huge initiative with about 9 other agencies, and we are really doing a big push to get more hosts.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's time to offer your home and see whether there's a way to that you can host.
Yes.
Do they ever have more than one homeless youth in the home?
Sometimes we have had that situation.
But mainly, it's
But
generally
mainly
only
it's,
one.
Yep, it's genuinely just one. Yeah.
And I'm sure the folks that are tuned in will have many more questions. So
Yes.
I'm glad that you're available, so available to help them think through whether they would be a good host or not.
Yes, I definitely am happy to answer any questions people have. We have an information session coming up September 5th as well. So that information can be found on our Facebook page
What day
and
of the week?
website. September 5th, I believe it's a Tuesday.
Tuesday, September 5th.
Yes,
And time of day?
from 6 to 7 p.m. And
Only an hour.
yep. But it's just a general info session, so no obligation. Just kind of come with your questions, and we'll go ahead and just answer questions people have and talk about what it looks like to host.
Well, good.
Yep.
Oh, that sounds like an easy introduction
Yeah.
to being hosted. And thank you very much, Ashley.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad that you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Avenues is happy to be here.
Good.